This video is sponsored by Audible. Recently, a video came out discussing the discourse surrounding the Little Mermaid live action adaptation, trying to examine the nuanced arguments about why people would not want Halle Bailey to play Ariel in this new adaptation that do not have to do with racism. Having watched the video, and I'm not naming the creator specifically because I do not want to give them undue negative attention. I mean, the video is probably is already on many people's minds. People probably already have seen it, but still, my intention is not to drag them to make this video. The intention is to discuss the larger issue of what does it mean to have a nuanced argument about something in which race is so heavily at the forefront of the conversation, and what does it mean to try and find the few arguments that are not about race in order to detach from that larger issue? Because in my opinion, just because you can find a handful of arguments that do not center Halle Bailey's blackness do not mean that they aren't distracting from the larger issue of part of the unpopularity and discourse around this film is because a young black girl will be playing Ariel. As someone who very, very much thinks nuance is important, I literally have a mug that says it. The thing that can be frustrating about it is that you can only truly find nuance and make nuanced arguments when you are willing to both A, be wrong, and two, be upfront about the larger issue and not ignore the context around what you are saying. Good evening. I am thankful again to be sponsored by Audible, the leading provider of spoken word entertainment, all in one place where you can find one of the largest selections of audiobooks. As an Audible member, you will get 1 credit every month, good for any title in the premium selection, which means the latest bestsellers, memoirs, gossip, and of course, what you're reading in fiction. This has actually been excellent for me and perfect timing because on my Patreon, we have literally just started doing The Witcher. We are going to go through all the books in the Witcher series. And so as my everyday thing, I have been listening to The Witcher, The Last Witch on Audible, and it has been really thrilling. The voice actor is doing such an amazing job as Geralt, and I feel like it's a totally different experience. Like, The Witcher fans are right. And yeah, it's just been a great experience. Like, I'll be washing, cooking, relaxing, and just listening to the sweet, sweet sound of Geralt slicing through Striga and having fairy tale adventures. So if you are looking or joining a book club or trying to look for something different or something to just listen to while you're walking around, but you're kind of podcasted out, because I know after a certain time you can listen to too many true crime and news podcasts, check out Audible. New members can try Audible for 30 days on me. You can go to audible.com/princessweeks or text princessweeks to 500-500 to get your 30 days free. Once again, that is audible.com/princessweeks or text princessweeks to 500-500 to get your Witcher on. I have a lot of feelings. So yeah. Witcher content is being fueled by this. So let me start off by what I think is the only actual argument against the Disney remake that matters. The Disney remakes have largely been money grabs that add very little to the existing canon and are bad. Like terrible, awful, god-awful bad. I mean, the Aladdin one was recently in the discourse, and it's so bad because it literally took one of the best brown princesses and decided to make her more of a damsel than she ever really was, and they gave her a song, I guess, but that's very frustrating.
You don't seem to know how dangerous Agrabah can be.
I'm a fast learner.
So yeah, the Disney live action remakes are overall bad. Even the good ones like Maleficent had a sequel that was not as good, but had great cheekbones. We can at least celebrate that. Halle Bailey is an accomplished singer with range. If you don't know, stream Ungodly Hour.
Love me, 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 love me.
She is a petite, sweet-faced young woman who, as you can see in the trailer for it, sports red-colored dreadlocks in the film. So even if you are mad about losing the red hair, that's not really the case. Racially, from what I've seen of the casting list, it seems as if they are going for a Brandy Cinderella style of diversity, since most of the human characters are either white people or other non-black POC, except for Queen Selena, a new character played by Noma Dumieni, who is clearly going to be Ariel's black mother. This is not some woke diversity film, at least not of yet. And also the idea that putting a black person in it makes it woke is already a problem in and of itself. They are probably going to be retweaking the whole sells her soul for a guy thing, the way they did in kind of Beauty and the Beast, how it's like, oh yeah, Stockholm Syndrome, lol, you know, because they have to own all the hot takes of the 2000s. And as a contributor to that, I apologize, because I know I've had some of those hot takes, because that's like your starter pack of feminism. But again, that's another conversation to have. But that's it. And I think we have to really push back against this idea that casting a black person is a radical act inherently. Like, especially because if we're saying that the best person should win, and in Hollywood the best person is best actor plus social media and potential for marketing, like that's the parameters, then casting a black woman who can sing, who can act, but it can also drive engagement and make Disney seem more diverse and profitable, that makes Halle Bailey the perfect person for the role. Like, she can sing, she can act, she can do the role, and it will give people another black Disney princess variant, because of course she's not going to replace white Ariel. It's a win-win situation if racism wasn't racism. We can have the conversation about how Disney uses diversity as a tool for marketing films without treating the act of diversity as a bad thing or being racist towards the actors who get cast. Because diversity and actively working to diversify your output is not a bad thing. The bad thing, the problem, is when it's only surface level, which Disney's has been. That is a nuanced take and a discussion worth having, and I think that is the only thing that right now, having not seen the film, we can have in good faith. I mean, if you look at the trailer, everything is very dark. Where's the color? I want her hair to pop. You know, those are the things that we can see and have actual legitimate complaints about. Trying to make it seem like anti-blackness and redhead prejudice are the same thing, and that by hiring a black person to play a redhead character, you are erasing red hair, is been an argument that has been going on for a while in a lot of ways. And I think that the only way to do this argument in good faith, I think I need to actually acknowledge what redhead prejudice is, because I think that we can acknowledge that it is a thing without having to say that it needs to be on the same level of anti-blackness.
What just jumped? Should have a parachute. Redheads, you gotta love them.
Due to the trope of red hair being a symbol of temperament, it being eye-catching and even labeled as exotic, you tend to see a lot more red-haired people in media than there are in real life. Like, from comics and books alone, you would think that being redheaded was very common, because like it looks good on the page, it looks good in color, so people would give characters that they wanted to pop red hair. And on top of that, historically, you do have stereotypes about girls with red hair, especially like my good sis Anne Shirley was like a short-tempered redhead. There's the whole thing of Judas being a redhead to show that redhead men can't be trusted. The hacks Cesare Lombroso and Guillermo Fierro concluded in their text Criminal Woman, the Prostitute, and the Normal Woman that red hair was associated with crimes of lust, and claimed that 48% of criminal women were redheads. So again, there is a antiquated prejudice about this. And in medieval times, you would see people with red hair being seen as witches, vampires, werewolves. Despite that, like almost all the Tudors had red hair at some point, but you know, the 1% gets a pass no matter what. Within the modern era, the United Kingdom especially has had issues with red hair. There have been issues about people with red hair being discriminated against. University College Cork students claim that, quote, people with ginger hair are easy targets for bullies. Psychology undergraduate Kevin O'Regan recorded that more than 90% of men with red hair had been victimized simply because of their hair color. So clearly, especially in the UK, there is a serious issue of red hair being targeted. And within the US, we have added to that with South Park.
In conclusion, I will leave you with this. If you think that the ginger problem is not a serious one, think again.
The Ginger Kids episode of South Park especially. The episode has Cartman, known racist, giving a presentation of ginger kids using the stereotypes for red hair. The episode has been linked to starting National Kick a Ginger Day, which has led to some hate crimes. I think we can say that targeting some groups because of their hair color can be considered a hate crime. I'm not dismissing that. Here is the thing. Even on that BBC article about the Cork students, you see an image of a black girl with red hair. Erin Kellerman from The Green Knight and Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a clearly mixed race girl with red hair. Like, she could play Annie. I mean, she has the red hair, she has freckles, so like, shout out to a lesbian icon. Erin, not Annie. Although, you never know. So when people are saying that they are erasing redhead characters, they mean that we're erasing white people and orange Tamarinians. You know, Malcolm X had red hair. Like, black people can, and I'm saying that we overwhelmingly do, because we don't need to go into hyperbole about, like, yes, black people can naturally have red hair, because if you're someone with mixed heritage, you carry the redhead gene. Meghan Markle's children are so ginger and white because she is biracial, her father is white, and therefore she likely has a recessive red hair gene. Diana and King Charles both likely had the gene, especially on the Spencer side, and so that's why Harry's hair is so red. And because of ding ding ding, colonization, imperialism, etc., that redhead gene has infused our lovely melanated heritage because, you know, rape and intermarriage and all of those things. Dr. George Busby from the Wellcome Trust Center for Human Genetics told Vice, quote, that the red hair and freckles is likely the result of the historical interactions between Europeans and Africans in the formation of the Caribbean populations, most notably with Brits, as the Spanish and Portuguese went to South America. To reiterate, Ariel in this adaptation of The Little Mermaid with Halle Bailey has red hair and is a black mermaid. So if you want redhead representation, you have it. Unless you don't want a black redhead mermaid, which is what a lot of people genuinely feel. And pretending otherwise just quite frankly ignores the last 15 years of race bending on television and film, since Bonnie on the Vampire Diaries at least, because the original Bonnie in the books was a white redhead character. And ever since, she has been getting hate and, you know, really egregious things said to her. Same with Candace Patton. This is not valid. It is not valid to completely racially harass actors for playing a character that originally was a redhead and trying to pretend as though that's the issue that you have, especially in the same show in which Elena is supposed to be a blonde because she's an icy blonde and they made her a brunette because, well, obviously we kind of know it to make it look more like Twilight-y. But that's the issue, is like, you cannot pretend that in response to losing one redhead character out of so many that exist, that it validates the harassment that black creators and black actors are facing. And that's also not what gets attention from people in terms of how we discuss it in social media. We keep doing these false equivalencies to continue the pretense that we are working from the same place when it comes from media representation. And I find it particularly frustrating because it flattens all the arguments in order to be like, these two things are the same even though they are not. Frequently, I will get called out about writing these two articles and sometimes this third one, and they will be presented as some sort of hypocrisy. I think it all intermingles because it's about flattening the discussion to mean one thing. So I'm going to take the sass out of my voice and like actually address this. So this article says to stop putting white actors as the dream casting for Japanese anime characters. Okay. Because of the art style of anime, which is often big eyes, colorful hair, and not what people in the West would largely consider the usual phenotype of Japanese people, there's an association that a lot of these characters are white. However, this often ignores that this is an art style, and unless otherwise stated, most anime characters are fantasy Japanese people. Usagi Tsukino, aka Sailor Moon, has blonde hair and blue eyes for like aesthetic reasons. She is not written or presented to be a white person in any other way. And this isn't universally true. Like, I would say that Edward Elric is a white character. Lloyd Foster from Spy X Family, my new obsession, also, I would say that character is white. Naruto Uzumaki is fantasy world Japanese. I mean, he's a ninja, for fuck's sake. So his hair and his eye color is not indicative of his race, because we have pink hair and purple hair and all kinds of other hair. So clearly the hair and the eye color are not signifying race. They are signifying an aesthetic. And what I've read from some sources is that gold is associated with the Buddha, but as I'm not Japanese, I do not want to get into that because it's not my lane. But this difference that we see comes from a fundamental issue of what happens when you transfer content from one culture to another. Japanese people in Japan are not people of color unless they are part of the indigenous groups like the Ainu or the Ryukin, and I apologize if I'm saying those wrong. Most Japanese people and most Japanese characters are seen as part of like the ethnic Japanese society default. So when they draw characters, unless they are explicitly drawing them with certain features, the default will be to Japanese. Whereas in the West, even though some of us can be black and other races, because of the system in which we live in, we default to whiteness. This is why before we get any description of skin color, we, and I mean the general we, not you as an individual, if you yourself do not do this, and you were raised in the West, congratulations, you've won. It will be assumed that the character is white unless otherwise stated. This is why, like as I said in my Blaze Zabini video, there was no concept of the character being anything other than white until he wasn't. Or how, despite being written as having dark skin, people kind of just read over Rue being black in the Hunger Games. When anime is consumed by us, we can transform it in our mind to meet our own expectations of how narrative should go, including aesthetics. And I don't mean simply by fan art, but I also like older dubs that were much more willing to localize and strip Japanese identity from the project. And I think that's part of why you have those divides between people who don't watch dubs because of that versus people who watch it now. I know I did something about dubs before. I have turned. I watch dubs now, especially now that I write and listen to stuff online. I've been listening to Chainsaw Man dubbed, and it's very good, and I like it. And I think we can also say that while we don't have to think that Japanese are trying to draw white characters, we can also say that like post-World War II, Disney animation really did greatly influence Japanese animation. And I think that just goes without saying. Like, the art of anime, the style of it does reflect a cultural exchange. But this is also why blackface is a thing. Like, they learned that from watching minstrelsy be transferred to other places. But it doesn't mean that they're making white characters. And regardless, in Japan, where they have their own industries, they're not worrying about representation the way that Asian Americans are worrying about it here. Nielsen's VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion said in 2022, the media industry continues to make progress in its inclusive representation of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander characters, themes, and narratives. However, that representation on screen is still below the Asian population in the US. Now is an important time for the industry to highlight Asian characters, stories, and experiences on screen through culturally inclusive programming. Accurate representation on screen can lead to greater understanding, inclusion, engagement, and peace off screen. Now, it's already somewhat problematic when all these identities are lumped together because all of these are different ethnicities with different cultures, backgrounds, etc. But beyond that, so now that anime is popular and we in the West are adapting, making our own live action Western adaptations of it, it is problematic that we don't put Asian American and specifically Japanese American actors at the top of that list. We are adapting works that come from an underrepresented population in this country, and we aren't putting them at the top of the call sheet. And even if you want to say like it would be pandering, we haven't done that enough to know that it would flop. Like, we've done the make Goku white thing and it sucked ass.
Goku. Nani?
Like, there is no reason to reiterate that. So that article is about that issue. Since I know someone is probably going to bring it up, what if they fan cast a black person? While I think it is different than fan casting a white person. I still say that if we are adapting anime, Asian actors should be at the top of the list. Fan art is one thing, like I don't think it changes anything when someone makes a fan art of Shishomaru being black, but I think if we were to cast a black actor as Shishomaru and not have any Asian actors audition, that would not be okay either. Article 2. And the point of this article as a part of the video is stop being racist because of casting. Fairly simple. It's a totally different situation, and I think the reason why these get clumped together is that mostly people only read the headline, but also that there is this idea like, well, if this is, why is this and this different? History, you know, it's like this idea that we have reached parity, that we have reached equality, and therefore any sort of like we should be seeing one group or the other is like, oh, now that's actually racist, and that's just not socially true. And it's very hard to argue with people who are not willing to understand that we are not playing on an equal sandbox. And the reality is that like white people in television are still the majority. In film, about 4 out of 10 leads in film, about 4 out of 10 lead actors in films are POC, so not even half yet. We aren't equal, but for some reason it keeps being presented as if we've already made it and are just being greedy. And it's like, based on what? And like the thing that's also so funny is that everyone's like, well, what if we made Tiana white? I mean, first of all, why would you want to? She's a frog for most of that movie. So I mean, if that's what your heart wants, I'm not gonna pull away from you. Okay, B. So you take Tiana, the only Disney black princess. We take Ariel, one of your sacred redhead princesses. You still have two. You still have Merida and Anna. You still have more white princesses, and we still only have one black Disney princess. Like, we need to start taking Belle. I mean, I take Aurora too. I like the idea of having like a very soft queen out here. For anything to even remotely be equal, like this one success, because we haven't seen the movie yet. We don't know if it's going to be good. This one success is not removing anything from you. It is adding one thing for us. And if you see the removal of Ariel, not as being a redhead, but as being a white person, as paramount to you losing something actively in media, then I think it's a bigger conversation of how you define your whiteness versus if this diversity is a bad thing. And then let's talk about Article 3. One of the frustrating disconnects that happened during the BLM movement over the summer of 2020 to 2021 was the fact that we were protesting about changing systematic, fundamental issues in the way that Black people are treated by the police and the police state. And the media industry said Jenny Slate will no longer be voicing Missy on Big Mouth. Now, I am glad that Black and brown voice actors are getting money. We need more diversity in voice acting. We need more ability for people to get into voice acting at different levels and it not just being the same handful of people. But that's not what we were talking about. And even on the creative lens, throughout comics, literature, etc., there were BIPOC artists who wanted to create their own characters and promote them. But those characters and creators would get screwed over. As a Black person, I want original Black characters almost all the time. That's why I wasn't wild about Black Buffy, and that's why I wrote that article, because Buffy Summers is like one of those foundational pop culture characters, like Tony Soprano, Archie Bunker. Why am I only naming races? Samantha on Bewitched. Icon, Genie from My Dream of Genie, problematic, but icon. Putting someone else in their shoes is not only asking for comparison, but it never allows the character to fully be theirs. It works in something like a Batman or a Bond or even a Superman, where we're used to that change over years of, the films having to switch it up. But that's not something that I would want a Black actor to deal with. I don't want Black actors to be put through the ringer like Anna Jope and Candice Patton and all the other POC who get dragged online for ruining their fave. And also, depending on who's working behind the scenes, I don't want another situation like Charmed, the new Charmed, where it can do more damage to have a massively successful white IP be revamped in a way that is honestly so culturally void that it actually doesn't successfully illustrate why using an IP and racially rebooting it is a good choice. Like, I think Charmed is actually a really good indicator of why that often doesn't work and you should just create a new thing, you know? Other than the actresses getting to be visible in media, which on a surface level I appreciate, but on a deeper level it didn't work. You know, creating an original series about 3 Afro-Latino witches would have been objectively better, which is why I didn't want a Black Buffy if we had other options. Not because I don't think that Black people can be vampire slayers, but there were better ways to make a show like that, which would have been safer for the actor, the showrunners, and wouldn't be attached to Whedon, and gave Black audiences a chance to enjoy an original character without racist shitheads making it about them. And in case there's any confusion, all of this is to say that yes, I will prefer original Black characters every time. That doesn't mean that I want Black actors to be harassed and put down for being cast in these roles. We can express our desire for original characters without endorsing and ignoring the racism that these actors are dealing with, because they don't deserve that. Even if we want more original characters, it's not their fault the characters are not original. That's a corporate issue, and I do not want Black actors to suffer because of that. And I think that all those 3 discussions live in the same nexus point of what does representation mean in the year of our goddess 2022 going on 2023? What is the point of this kind of diversity? And I think what is often missed when we talk about representation is that, like, there's a reason why Martin Luther King wanted Nichelle Nichols to be Uhura on Star Trek. Representation does matter. It does matter that people can see themselves in media and know that they have a place there, to know that they can have a seat at the table as actors, as creators, just as watchers. Those things are important. Part of why I watched Boy Meets World is because Angela Moore was there and she was Black. Doesn't mean I don't watch white shit. You know, I love my Downton Abbey, and I do not want any Black people on that show. Stay out of it. Don't ever go there. You do not no Black person deserves to be around all of that nonsense. No one. Maybe representation and diversity is not just there for clout or for woke points. When you look at the history of Black representation in media, whether it be in the United States or in Britain, there are multiple books you can read about either one. There is a long history of racist portrayals of us, limiting portrayals of us, and we have been slowly clawing back at that. And we get a lot of pushback, we get a lot of internal dialogue, and we get a lot of treatment as if, like, we should no longer have to have these arguments or these struggles when we are having them still. We have not come so far that people should already be tired of us winning or getting roles or having successes. Again, at the Oscars itself, we have only ever had 1 woman of color win Best Actress. And now this year it's up between Michelle Yeoh, who I'm rooting for, and Cate Blanchett. So there's a 50-50 chance that we could finally have another woman of color win Best Actress, an Asian woman win Best Actress, or it could go to a white woman who's already won twice. This is all to say that people speak a lot about nuance, about this not being a race thing, when ignoring all the racism, all the history, all of the context that fuels the reason why we have to have these discussions. And, like, okay, your argument about not being cited for the new Little Mermaid is about capitalism and not racism. That's cool, that's great. That doesn't mean that you ignore the racism that is connected to the backlash. You know, part of why I wanted to make this video is to show that you can do both. You can do all of it. Nuance does not mean both sides have a point. Nuance is about the subtle differences, the distinctions between 2 things that can seem similar. And in my opinion, there's nothing similar between I don't like this remake because Disney remakes are bad culturalist marketing sinkholes, and I don't like a Black red-haired mermaid because white redheads need more representation. Like, those are not equal arguments. There's no nuance between those 2 things. One is about, I don't want this Black girl in this product, and the other one is, I don't like seeing this black girl being used for marketing, and I want them to prove to me that to earn my dollar rather than think I just give it to them because they hired a black actress. Two different arguments, two different things. And acknowledging those two differences is what's really important, because we don't have to acknowledge racist to acknowledge that marketing and capitalism are fucked.